every aspect of its life cycle is closely allied to its namesake parsnip. The plant is a biennial, which means it spends 1 year at least as a taproot developing or storing energy to produce a flowering stalk in its second or subsequent year. The plant requires chilling. It's a temperate species plant. It needs to be chilled before it'll send up the stalk. The moths overwinter as adults. They also need to undergo chilling before they develop reproductively. They mate as soon as that rosette goes up to produce a flowering stalk. The females lay eggs on the undersides of leaves. The caterpillars crawl up to the buds, flowers, and fruits where they earn their name webworm by spinning silk. Just about the time the seeds are ripening, the caterpillars burrow their way into the hollow stem, pupate, and then start the cycle again, just basically hanging out for 10 months until they've chilled and the next season comes out. So every aspect of the life cycle closely maps onto the life cycle of its host plant. And it's clear why they put up with these phanerocoumorans, because by feeding on the flowering structures, they actually get the best deal. The most nutritious tissue in the plant is in the flowers and fruits. The nitrogen levels are substantially higher. Nitrogen, of course, is what goes into protein, and protein, as vegetarians in the room will attest, is a limiting factor for vegetarians in general, certainly true for insects. So they can feed on the most protein-rich tissues if they can put up with the phanerocoumorans, and in fact they do. So for our postcards from the edge of the leaf, lesson 1, eat what's put in front of you. And this is a general lesson for all holometabolous insects, insects with complete development. Usually the adult stage is the dispersal stage. So the immatures, like caterpillars, they may have a lot of legs, but they can't go very far. So over evolutionary time, holometabolous insects, like caterpillars, have ended up developing remarkable behavioral and physiological adaptations to incredibly challenging diets. Parsnip webworms can ingest the equivalent of their body weight in parsnip flowers and fruits in a day, 10% of the body weight in phanerocoumorans in a day. So deadly toxins, they can eat, it's like a grown person eating 15 pounds of a deadly poison in a day. It's hard to eat 15 pounds of anything in a day, actually. Even chocolate, I've tried. But 15 pounds of a deadly toxin, truly a remarkable physiological accomplishment. So how they accomplished that, we didn't really find out until graduate school, until after I finished graduate school and started at University of Illinois in August 1980. And by 1983, I was working with my incredibly amazing and wonderful colleague, Dr. Arthur Zongerol, who couldn't be here today. Here's a typical picture, but in our lab, we also identify ourselves by our parsnip dermatitis. That's his right there. And he has been an utterly essential part of all of these studies. And among the first things we determined, there are many, many ways that webworms have developed to cope with this enormous onslaught of toxins. One is relatively straightforward, and they take a lead from the plants. We noticed feeding these caterpillars a defined artificial diet just made out of chemicals, no plant material. They're kind of a dirty white in color. When you feed them flowers and fruits, they turn yellow. They develop a yellow streak. And this yellow color is a carotenoid called lutein. And lutein, as you may be familiar, it's well known to be an antioxidant. It's actually, the identification was made with the help of a food chemist at University of Illinois, Dr. John Erdman, who works on lutein sequestration in human prostatic fluids. And he was such a congenial colleague. I called him up and said, can we get some help with this carotenoid? And we brought his caterpillars into his lab, and quite a difference from the usual, I imagine, prostatic fluids. So what they do is sequester this carotenoid, and this yellow pigment screens out the wavelengths that photoactivate the phanerocoumorans. So they're actually screening out the activating wavelengths and neutralizing the excited oxygen molecules, the toxic oxyradicals that can damage DNA. And this sequestration contributes to allowing these caterpillars to feed on the plant in broad daylight. So we have lesson number 2, wear sunscreen. I know, you've heard that before, but it does apply to insects too. So. But far more important to the caterpillar for tolerating these enormous quantities of toxins are biochemical mechanisms for deactivating and dismantling these toxins. And these are, for the most part, we discovered early on, a group of enzymes called cytochrome P450 monooxygenases. And these are organisms that these are enzymes all eukaryotic organisms have to help them deal with toxins. In fact, those toxins you consumed at lunch are probably busy being broken down right now by the cytochrome P450s in your liver. The parsnip webworms have P450s activity in their guts, as do most caterpillars. That's where most of the environmental toxins they normally encounter are first enter the body. And webworms have spectacularly high levels of activity. They're over 300 times more effective at metabolizing franacoumarins than these generalized caterpillars like the southern armyworm, in this case the cabbage looper, are capable of doing. So lesson 3, if you've got to do the same thing every day, at least do it well. They are extremely good at metabolizing these franacoumarins. Now, how these P450s work, I had to go to another colleague who's here today. There's Dr. Mary Schuler, whom I've been working with since, I think, at least 1988, who had technical skills, which I actually lacked and never really anticipated that I'd ever need. I started out as an ecologist and ended up having to learn a lot about biochemistry and physiology and molecular biology, but fortunately Mary knew a lot more about all those than I did and was working at the time on plant P450s. These same enzymes in plants are responsible for making some of these toxic materials. A huge gene family, over 11,000 sequence members now, all of which are very different except for one conserved motif in the sequence that's associated with an iron atom that helps these enzymes oxidize things. And molecular analysis sets the origins of these enzymes, these genes that code for the enzymes, back about 400 million years, which was just about the time primordial arthropods were crawling out of the primeval muck onto terrestrial, into terrestrial environments to encounter primordial plants. So this diversification of the cytochrome P450 gene family has been associated with this coevolutionary arms race, whereby the plants develop an amazing armamentarium of chemical weapons that are countered by an equally amazing armamentarium of defensive detoxification enzymes. Now, in vertebrates, these enzymes were known to be what biochemists, not my word, call promiscuous. It doesn't mean you don't know where they go at night. It means that they accept a lot of different substrates, so they're not very specialized. And that's appropriate given the diet of most of the vertebrates that had been studied: rats, rabbits, humans. Humans are spectacularly omnivorous. One bite of pizza can give you 5 different kingdoms depending on the toppings you like. You know, if you like mushrooms. And in polyphagous insects like the corn earworm, Helicoverpazia, I should call it, it's Helicoverpazia. It's a caterpillar that feeds on 100 different families of plants. We call it corn earworm in Illinois. It's called the tomato fruitworm in California. It's the cotton bollworm in the south and southwest. Just an indication of how incredibly polyphagous it is. The P450s are also promiscuous. Here's one that has the not very euphonious name of CYP6B8 that metabolizes all of these chemicals, including natural substances like the franacoumarin xanthotoxin, as well as other insecticides. And in fact, it's thought that one reason insects so quickly develop resistance to insecticides, insects like the corn rootworm, have been dealing with poisons for millions of years. And they have enzymes that are generalized enough to accommodate the new poisons that we invent and throw at them.